So I see it argued about all the time, Facebook groups, message boards here and there, Reddit and such. What is the best base to either make your Insight or Infinity in? And there's even been a little bit of a wrinkle thrown in kind of recently, since now you can make Infinity in spears and pole arms, but just remember, obviously Insights you can only make in pole arms still. Some people argue for this base, some people argue for that base, some other people have different preferences for different reasons. So I'm going to tell you by the end of this video definitively what you should do about your Insight and Infinity base. So first up, I'm going to go over what are some of the choices that people decide to do for pole arms, since this is kind of the classic argument, and I've heard it time and time again for literally years and years. Now, right here, we have the elite versions of the pole arms right here, and these are generally what people go to, but I will say my personal advice, and a lot of people probably know this, but just in case, the very first pole arm that you get that has 4 open sockets, like on a playthrough or right after you get done with the playthrough, make your Insight instantly, especially for those casters and sorceresses, but even not if you have any other character. You do get a lot of enhanced damage relative to the cost of Ral, Tyr, Talon, Soul. So even if you get a scythe right here, you get up to 5 sockets, it says right here on a scythe. So if you find one with 4 open sockets, first off, just slam an Insight in it as fast as you can. It will help out your kill speed on your caster so much, because you will never ever have the mana problems that you had before. So that's the first thing I do want to mention, kind of a newbie tip right off the bat here, but just don't worry about the base. If you are like new to the game and you're just starting out, just make your Insight as fast as you can, because generally those runes come pretty easy. So next up, once you get your better base, and we're stepping down to the elite pole arms here. Now we're just looking at standard versions. Man, I wish an Ogriac super sick could have 4 open sockets, but unfortunately could have 3 just because it has a sick name. But you'll see a ton of these early on in ladder. That's the Colossus Volge. Now the argument for why people make their Insights early on in a Colossus Volge, and that's because the maximum sockets you see right here is 4. That means if you find any Colossus Volge that is white, you can take it over to Larzik, use your Larzik socket quest, and you will get those 4 sockets you need in order to make your Insight, or if you wanted to, also you could make Infinity. So besides that, it is an elite base, so the top damage here is 165. It's not too shabby, but the main reason, numero uno, why they always make these CV Insights early in ladder is because of the 4 open sockets. Also on top of Larzik, you could throw this in the cube, do the cube recipe that adds sockets, and because 4 is the max, I'm not going to go over the full minutia of why, you have a 50% chance of getting 4 open sockets in it, and the other 50% of the time you're going to get 1, 2, or 3. Now the negatives to the CV, it does have a major one, and that is, look at the strength requirement right here. 210 strength requirement. I don't remember exactly what it is offhand, but I believe your mercenary would have to be like level 91, 2, or 3, somewhere around there, to have enough strength in order to use this without getting extra strength on its gear. So that is one big, mega huge negative on top of that. Now you see the weapon speed over here. This is important to note for later. It's kind of an argument against the Colossus Volge as well. The weapon speed here, there's just the way, once again, I'm not going to go into crazy detail of why they number it this way, but it's a 0, and the lower the number, the better. So you do see the Ogriacs up here that you cannot actually make it in is a 10, and this one is a 0. So this one's actually faster than that. But we'll go ahead and move down to what is considered another great option here for the elite pole arms, and that is the Thresher. This is what a lot of people will argue, and once again, look at the requirements here. 152 on the strength and 118 on the dex. You could probably throw this on your mercenary at like level 80, which does not take a lot of time to get to in Diablo 2. But notice the one negative that's definitely going to get pointed out. You can't find a regular standard white Thresher in order to Larzik it and get 4 open sockets. You either have to find it directly with 4 sockets, or if you do that cube recipe I was mentioning earlier, you have a 1 in 6 chance of getting 4 open sockets. So they're much less common. So also look at the attack speed, -10. So attack speed means you hit more times, which means you leech more life, which means also crushing blow will happen more often, chopping more life off of monsters. So that's the argument for the Thresher. I know a lot of people would consider the Thresher the best possible option, and I will mention for both of these, ethereal versions will have extra damage on top of this, and also will have slightly less requirements. More specifically, the one you worry about is on the strength. So I know the CV will be 200 strength instead of 210, so you can wear it a few levels earlier, maybe like 88 instead of 92 or something like that. There are also other arguments here. We got the Great Poleaxe, we got the Giant Thresher, and the Cryptic Axe. These all fall in similar ranges to the Thresher, talking about the sockets. In other words, we got 1 in 5 here on the Cryptic Axe, we got 1 in 6, and we got 1 in 6 for the Great Poleaxe and the Giant Thresher. Now, also, if you look at the strength requirements, you notice they're all not particularly super high, 165, 179, 188, so all pretty high, but all under what the Colossus Vulge is, which the Colossus Vulge is probably going to be the worst option if you are being nitpicky on that type of stuff. Now you can go ahead and look at the attack speed. Now, the Thresher up here is -10, you see right here, and the Giant Thresher is also 10, so they're going to have the same attack speed. The Cryptic Axe has 10, but it also has the highest top end damage. So some people will argue for that one. And the Great Poleaxe kind of falling somewhere in the middle of the 0 attack speed, but it's at 127 on the cap. And also, like I'll mention for all of these, the ethereal versions will have slightly less requirements, and they will definitely have more damage. So the ethereal versions are more sought after, but they are much more rare to get, obviously. So anytime you want to have the best possible base for a possible item to make the best possible version of that, they're always going to want to be ethereal for an Act 2 mercenary, or really any mercenary weapon specifically, but we're talking about the Act 2 mercenary because they do not lose durability on mercenaries. Alrighty, now we're hopping over to spears, and really, I'm going to be honest, there's only one that I really ever hear spoken about as far as a base option for your Infinity. And that base is this one right up over here. That is the Man Catcher, and generally, if you're going to make Infinity, it's incredibly expensive. It's got those 2 burr runes in it, so you're going to want to make it in probably an elite ethereal base if possible, so you're going to go with the ethereal Man Catcher. Now, Phil, what in the heck? Why would people argue for an item that doesn't even have 100 damage on it? That's insane. After it gets ethereal, it's going to, but why would it has such low damage? All of those polearm bases have well over 100, some in 150, and if you scroll down here, a war pike actually has 100, almost 180 damage on a non-ethereal type right here. Why in goodness would people go with the Man Catcher? Well, the reason is this -20 right over here. It's the fastest attack speed that you can get on one of these elite versions of weapons, and along with the most damage. So the reason why you want to have that increased attack speed, which I mentioned before, and this one's even higher than those other ones, is to get Crushing Blow to proc even more, because Crushing Blow takes off a percentage of the monster's health. So when you're going against bosses, maybe you're even going against Ubers and stuff, it'll actually chop off like many tens of thousands of life, because those elite giant bosses, you know, the Ubers and things like that, have so much health. And this Crushing Blow doesn't take off a certain amount of damage. It takes off a percentage of the remaining health that they have. So people will argue that this base is the absolute best and an absolute must. And if you want to pay the big bucks, the premium, you get the ethereal superior version. I would say if you are making Infinity, and we are talking about spears here, you at least want to wait to get at least an ethereal base, because it is kind of a large boost on the base damage. But we'll talk about a little bit now that I will give you my definitive response for what the absolute undisputed perfect base is that you should use when making your Infinity. Now, as far as insight goes, because you have to do it in a polearm, and you're looking for your end game, whatever your end game character is. Which one of these do you pick? Not that one, not the Ogre X. I know it's Ogre X, just a joke, because it can only have 3 sockets, remember? But yeah, any of these ones, just pick any one. It doesn't effing matter. It's one of the biggest gripes, I guess, with this argument about what is the best base. Who the F cares? First of all, if you're worrying about your mercenary killing stuff, that's your first problem. Why aren't you killing stuff with your character? The amount of damage output that your actual character should be doing should be so much more than what your mercenary's doing. It really shouldn't matter. Yeah, I guess getting at least an elite polearm base or something along those lines, you should be able to get without too much struggle. But if you're paying like high runes for a perfect enhanced damage ethereal base for your insight, you're having a little problem there. Unless you're just so crazy wealthy, you get lucky, find 12 burr runes in a day or something like that. I would not waste a single brain cell thinking or worrying about, oh, what if I calculate out the attack speed with the Crushing Blow and blah, what is this doing? No, just get your insight in an elite base, Maybe if you get lucky enough to find an ethereal base, plug one in there. But I don't even worry about that usually, unless, like I said, I happen to come across it. You honestly will not notice a gameplay difference between an ethereal thresher, between an ethereal great poleaxe, between an ethereal CV, cryptic axe. You're not going to notice a difference between any of these. Your mercenary does not do hardly anything except for carry around your meditation aura and then whatever aura that Act 2 mercenary comes with inherently. Now, switching over to the Infinity, which base should you choose? Now, here I'm going to go into a little bit more specific. Any one of these that is ethereal, and that's only because if you're making a rune word that's that expensive, make sure that it is ethereal, just because, I mean, if you're going that far, making that expensive a rune word, you can at least step up the base a little bit. Because at that point, I'm guaranteeing you're going to find a 4-socketed polearm before you find 2 fur runes. But once again, even with Infinity, you're not going to feel any difference in gameplay. I guarantee you, I could go into your account if you have a perfect 15% enhanced damage ethereal thresher, and I pull that off and put on a regular thresher, you are not going to notice a difference. If I pull off that superior thresher Infinity and I throw on a Colossus Volge Infinity, I promise you, 100%, 1,000 bazillion, gagillion %, you're not going to notice a difference at all. You're going to be much better off using that rune value that you're trading for that perfect superior base and using that to make upgrades for your actual character to have more kill speed that way, because your mercenary really isn't killing much of anything.